and welcome to the Marina Skua podcast. My name's Marina, I'm a knitwear designer and yarn dyer based in Wiltshire in the southwest of England, and my podcast is about the things I'm knitting, things I'm designing, some of my yarn and various other crafts, usually of a textile-y nature. And I like to use natural fibres and sourcing things as locally as I can whenever possible. So yeah, let's just jump straight into the project I have on my lap. This is a shawl that I started a while ago. It's been hibernating for a little while, but I'm very pleased to have started working on it, and I'm doing so in an effort to try and work through some of my works in progress. I've got a few too many things on the needles at the moment, some of which I can't talk about. So there are designs in progress that are back there somewhere that I'm not going to be discussing until they come out, because such is the nature of these things. And so I'm trying to work through some works in progress, because when I have a lot of work with deadlines, I just get tempted to cast on everything else. And so I'm working on a bit of a one-off, one-on policy where I can only start something new if I finish something. So I think I have 6 works in progress at the moment. And that's enough. Like that's enough things to be working on. And 4 of them have deadlines within the next couple of months. I have 4 things with deadlines in the next couple of months. I have to finish 1 project before I can start either of the next 2. There's a load of very boring scheduling stuff. But this one I am working on when I don't need to think about things, because some things are requiring a fair bit of concentration. This one is really not concentrate-y. It's a slightly modified Leoma shawl, which is a design of mine that I released quite a few years ago, using very, very different yarn. Originally I used Luma by the Fibre Company, which is a DK weight yarn, but it's kind of summery. It's got some silk and some flax in it. It's a really lovely yarn. But this one is a lot more sort of earthy. Both of the yarns I'm using are hand-spun. So the grey is, I spun it from tops from Fernhill Fibre. This is an undyed grey. And it's just beautiful and kind of silvery and really lovely to work with. This tops would have been really nice spun up as a true worsted spin, but I went semi-worsted because that's more comfortable to me. And I kind of enjoy the fuzziness it gives, because I'm going for something really lofty and airy with this. So this yarn is probably roughly a sport weight. And this one I'd say is more like a true 4-ply fingering weight, depending how you classify things. But I'm working with them on 4.5mm needles, which is fairly loose and light. So this one is actually the leftovers from my top. So I'll talk about what I'm wearing in a second. So this is leftovers of the contrast colour that I used in this bottom section here. And it's a whole mishmash of fibres. It's got some really interesting colours in there. There are lovely bits of like yellowy orange and bright pink. But the overall effect is kind of brown, which I really like. So there's some mohair in there. There's some fleece from Fernhill Fibre. I have lots and lots of their fleeces because they just produce beautiful wool. And Fernhill Farm is where I get the wool for my Mendip yarn, which is my hand-dyed range. Yes, so differences. I've changed the stripe pattern. So the Leoma shawl, the original one, has a more sort of random stripe pattern. This one, the stripes are so subtle. The whole thing is in moss stitch or seed stitch if you're not in the UK. And so that gives kind of blendy stripes. And then this one, I'm just doing the stripes in a sequence that will hopefully use up these yarns at a similar rate, because I have slightly different amounts of the yarns. and we will see how I do with that as it comes along. But this is sort of my trying to get a few rows in whilst also looking after a mad toddler project, because I don't have to think about it that much, and it's just knits and purls in a very easy sequence. And also it's just lovely yarn to be working with, and I'm obsessed with hand-spun at the moment. And yeah, I think that's all I really have to say on that one. It's just nice to be working on it again, although I still have a fair way to go because I'm hoping to use up as much of the yarn as I can. So yes, I'll talk about what I'm wearing and hand-spun yarn now because I'm very excited. So this top is the Ironwork tee by my friend Diana Waller. It's a lovely, lovely pattern. It's very well written. It's a fairly straightforward knit. It's knitted bottom up. Mine is even more cropped than it is intended to be, which I think is super cute. And the yarns, I told you about this one. This one has a lot of mohair, a lot of angora, quite a bit of alpaca, and then various bits of different wool. It's actually like lots of naturally white and grey fibres blended with some really quite strong sort of minty bright green. But that gives this really sort of gentle sagey green, which I love. And it is just the fuzziest thing in the world, and it's so cozy and lovely. Yes, and so then on the bottom half, if you've been following for a little while, this project is very exciting because I've got my hand-spun skirt, which I'll try and insert a bit of something so you can see better. But this is a skirt that I spun the yarn for, wove the fabric from that yarn, chucked it in the washing machine, and then turned into a skirt. I'm really, really pleased with it. I'm very proud of it. I have just here, this is all the fabric that was cut off from what I made. So this is the only fabric waste, because I cut it in panels so that I would use as much of the fabric as I possibly could. This is just an offcut from the end of the waistband. And then in this little basket here, so weaving tends to produce loom waste. So where the yarn is tied onto the loom, you end up with some extra bits of yarn. They tend to be, I tend to tie mine on so that I'm wasting as little yarn as possible, but I've got quite a lot of these lengths of short bits of yarn that are really not that, some of them are really short, depending which end of the loom it was tied onto. They're not useful for that much, but I really don't like waste. So I did make, this was from a previous weaving project, so it's a different yarn, but you can use them for pom-poms. Now this one is a little bit scraggly looking. It is difficult to get them as really nice and dense as you would with a traditional pom-pom, because basically you have to just align all of the bits of yarn and then tie them together rather than winding them round and round and round and packing them really tight and tying them together and then cutting them. It's just more difficult to manage. But I think it's really cute and it's really nice and fuzzy, and it's like, I've treated it quite roughly. So this is, the yarn was Woolly Mammoth Fibres, one of her limited edition Jacob's yarns, which I think she's done a couple of batches of. And I made a dress, tunic dress thing using this yarn as the warp. And then I've kind of gone and semi-felted this, so it's a little bit more like fuzzy and dense. And I think it is super sweet, so I'm going to be doing the same with these bits. And it's just a nice thing to do with scrap bits of yarn, as long as they're long enough. Like some of them are just too short to be useful. We're getting into that territory here. But yeah, like making pom-poms the normal way just often seems like a waste of fairly good yarn. Like, you could make something else with that. Even though pom-poms are lovely, but I don't know. They're not necessary. And so I think making them out of yarn that you pretty much can't use for anything else other than like stuffing toys or something, I think is a nice way to do it. What am I going to show you next? I have so many things. Oh yeah, so I was talking about the skirt. Yes, I'm very, very pleased with it. I love it. I really enjoy having an entirely hand-spun yarn outfit. And I am in the process of editing a process video for my patrons. It's going to be a look at the whole process of making the skirt, from like planning out how I'm going to use the fabric through to cutting it and sewing it and how it's all coming together. And that will include some, like, I'm going to include information alongside the video on, like, if you were to do the same and you have a length of fabric, like how you might be able to make a skirt in a similar way, because it's my preferred way of making skirts with fabric that I want to conserve and not waste. And yeah, let's show you a finished thing. Now, I showed this one last time, but it's out now, so I'm just going to talk about it very quickly. This is the Deep Field top. It's covered in stars, it's really lovely, and so far, I released it yesterday and the response has been really, really nice. It's so nice to see people enjoying it and hopefully planning to knit it this winter. So you could do it as stars, you could make like a frosty version with really pale icy blues. Someone was talking about making a neutrals version, which I think would be really pretty. Like, you don't have to buy in 100% to the starry theme. And yes, so this is the Deep Field top. It is on my website and Ravelry, and until the end of 2023 the pattern is 15% off with the code STARS, all in capital letters. So if you would like to get the pattern, you can do so slightly cheaper. And it is a really good project if you are planning to join my Out of the Dark make along. I can't remember if I've talked about it recently in the podcast, but every year I run a make along, and it runs from January to March, and it is mostly just like a nice way to get through the miserable half of winter. So the idea is that it runs from New Year's Day to the spring equinox, and by then the clocks will have changed, and you know, bulbs will be coming out in the garden, things will be starting to grow leaves, and everything will be a bit less cloudy and muddy, which is something I look forward to. And so to take part, you just need to make something using my yarn, patterns or fibre, and take photos of them, put them on Instagram. If you are a patron or would like to become a patron, you can post about them in the Discord channel. I think I'm going to set the channel up quite soon so that we can start project planning and talking about what we're going to be making for it, because I think that'll be really fun. I'm hoping, if I get this out the way, and a couple of my designs that I really need to work on, I'm hoping to make a Mistland cardigan in hand-spun yarn, and also a lapidarium jumper in my Mendip DK. I think I've chosen my colours, but I'm not 100% sure, so I'm not going to commit to them yet, but I'm excited. And I'll be doing a little video on Instagram, live session on the 1st of January to, you know, start at least one of my projects. And yeah, so the hashtag for that one is Out of the Dark Mal, M-A-L, 2024. And yeah, I'll be picking prizes throughout. There will be nice prizes. There's going to be, previously I've done it, so I've drawn a few prizes right at the end of the make-along, but I'm going to do like a couple like at the end of January, end of February, and then at the end of the make-along, just to spread things out a bit more. And if you're joining in the Patreon Discord server, you get to double dip. So you can post on Instagram and Discord, and that doubles your chances of winning. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I hope people are going to join. It's always really nice and fun, and it's nice to do a make-along, and I hope that it's a nice thing for other people to take part in, but also it just is there to make me happy, because I really enjoy seeing the things that people make with my patterns and yarn and stuff. And so yeah, it's a nice thing to do to help us all through the winter. So the next thing I'm going to show you is going to be difficult to show, because I'm doing 2 at a time sleeves, which is how I do my sleeves. So we've got all needles in the way and things, which is slightly annoying. But this is the Jones cardigan by Tin Can Knits. I have shown it before, so we've just got a bit of progress on it. It's going to be my son's Christmas present. And so we've got some nice cables. There is a fairly visible skein change here, but I'm okay with that. I think it's going to look nice regardless. And he gets his clothes so mucky that you're probably not going to be able to tell quite soon. And I started the collar thinking, you know, I'll pick up the button band and collar stitches, I'll get those done, and then I'll start the sleeves this evening. And then the collar, because it's got this really nice shawl collar and short rows to shape it, it took so much longer than expected. But the short rows are placed really, really nicely so that the collar turns back beautifully. So it's a fairly simple project, worked from the bottom up. And it's sized from newborn to big person, and it's just really nice, and it has these lovely details. It's a very well done pattern. Just got the start of the cables on the top of the sleeve there. And so I mentioned last time, I've swapped around. I'm doing moss stitch, in single moss stitch instead of double moss stitch, so seed stitch instead of moss stitch if you're not in the UK. And I've turned the cables upside down because I prefer them this way. And otherwise I am following the pattern to the letter, which is something I rarely do because I don't know, when I knit from other people's patterns, I like to do it so that I don't have to think about things as much, and then I often end up making modifications anyway, and I don't know why I do it to myself. But this one I'm really enjoying. And yeah, I'm going to be filming a video on how I do 2 at a time sleeves for my patrons, because once you've got the hang of it, it's super straightforward, but until you get your head around it, it can seem really complex. But it's literally like doing magic loop, but you also have another sleeve in the loop as well. And yeah, so that's that one. That will be finished before Christmas because it's going to be a Christmas present. And I'm really lucky that in the time that I've been knitting this, he's decided he loves cardis, and he has one that my grandmother in Argentina made for my little brother, using alpaca that's local to them in the Andes. My grandmother's not around anymore, but the cardigan is, and so it obviously doesn't fit my brother anymore because he is larger than me. But it fits my little boy, and it's just so lovely that we still have that and he's able to wear it, and that he loves it so much. He demands to wear it. I don't know to what extent I have instilled in him a love of coziness or if it's just inherent, but it's very, very nice that we share some priorities. Yes. Now, I think I've got one more project to show you that's on the needles, and then I'm just going to show you some yarn because it's going to be fun. I'll take the labels off there because we don't need those. And I'm trying to be good about keeping things in bags and baskets so they don't all get mixed up. So this project, if you've been watching for a while, you will have seen a lot. I'm getting there. I've just got sleeves to do now. This is one of the deadline projects I've been talking about. And I'm obsessed with it. It's lovely. And so I can't remember what state this was in last time I showed you, but we've got shoulder seams. So this is a design for Making Stories magazine issue 12. And the theme is Art Nouveau, which I have obviously taken and run with. Yeah, we've got a nice squishy neckline, which encloses the steeks. And I have just picked up for the sleeves and done the first couple of motifs of the colour work, because this colour work pattern is going to continue down the sleeves. And this will probably be the last time I show you this. It's going to be sent off in the new year. And yeah, I've been really, really enjoying it, but also I am looking forward to moving on to other things. Then on the back we've got just that repeating pattern again. Again, I'm doing my sleeves 2 at a time. I'm not yet at the point where I sincerely regret doing all over colour work 2 at a time, because it's a lot of yarn management and I invariably get myself in a tangle. But the last sample I did as a garment, I did the sleeves 1 at a time, and then seriously regretted it when doing the second sleeve. It was awful. I hated it. So it's 2 at a time whenever possible, because second sleeve syndrome is a real thing and it's not for me. And yeah, I do socks 2 at a time when I do socks, which hasn't been for ages and probably won't be again soon. I'm not going to say never, but I don't enjoy knitting socks that much. But I really do love having hand knit socks, so I might have to suck it up. But there are more things that I'm excited about knitting than socks, so I will just see how long it is before I decide to knit some more. Because I do have some sock yarn that I would really like to become socks. We'll get there. Things are covered in polystyrene from Christmas decorations, which the child has decided to shred and turn into snow. Yeah. So I am really, really excited at the moment about local textiles, working with small suppliers and farms and sourcing things traceably and sustainably. And you know, that's one of the things I love about my hand-spun projects, is I know where the fleeces have come from. I've dyed and carded them myself. I've had control over most of the processes involved. And I'm doing more and more work, sort of so far behind the scenes, but trying to work with local farms to try and, I don't know, help each other. So I'm being all ambiguous. I'm just going to tell you what I'm doing, because I don't think I've mentioned this to you guys before, and I'm really, really excited about it. So I am part of an organisation called Fibreshed. If you've not heard of Fibreshed, it is the concept of developing regional textile systems, so involving people who grow fibre, who process fibre, so mills and processors, and then people who make clothing and fabric and textiles, and trying to join all of that up so that you can produce textile items within a defined geographic area. So I'm in the southwest England Fibreshed, which goes from Gloucestershire and Wiltshire, where I am, and Dorset, all the way down to the tip of Cornwall. And I've received a little bit of funding from Southwest England Fibreshed to produce a collection using yarns that have never left the West Country. So I'm going and visiting local farms, not like completely local all the time, but within the southwest of England. I'm visiting farms, talking to them, learning about their stories. For them to be involved in Fibreshed, they have to be committed to sustainable and or regenerative methods. Losing my words. And so each of those farms, because farming is challenging these days, you know, the UK is a small island and we are absolutely not food sufficient, but a lot of the time it's cheaper overall to import it from overseas. And times are hard for farmers. And so a lot of them are diversifying, which means a lot of farms are returning to wool, wool in particular, because we have a really strong sheep tradition in this country. Wool used to be a massive part of our economy. We have an excellent climate for it. We have abundant green grass because it rains so much. And we have the ideal climate for raising sheep. And where sheep, more and more over the years, sheep have been bred to be good for meat. So that means often breeding bigger sheep and neglecting the quality of the wool. There are a lot of farmers that are doing great work in starting to use their wool again. Often it's a case of again rather than something they've always been doing, because wool was almost entirely completely replaced by synthetic fibres that are manufactured cheaply, often in the Far East. And I'm quite anti-synthetic fibre. I don't mean that as a judgment thing. I started using acrylic yarn because it's what I could afford and it was what was available to me locally. But working with farmers who I can go and visit and see what they're doing, both to benefit their surroundings, but also to sort of diversify and try and come up with revenue streams, because it's, you know, it's quite common now for farms to have income coming from a lot of different directions. So I'm being very long-winded, but I am talking to farms that are doing really, really interesting things. I'm going and visiting them. I'm sourcing yarn from them, and I'm going to use this for this collection. And so each of the farms I visit will inspire a design for the collection, and the designs, to a greater or lesser extent, will be inspired by the stories of the farm. And so I'm going to be sharing more about this as it progresses. So far I've done a couple of farm visits and it's been so, so lovely. So the first one is Gpol Farm, which is near Gillingham in Dorset and really, really near to me. They're sort of 15 minutes drive. And I went and I had a chat with Rachel, and they have Dorset Down sheep, which is this one. They have a few different Shetlands, and they also have some Jacobs. And they've also got some yarn that includes Dartmoor something, I don't remember. But I'll put a link to them in the description below. And So these are yarns that I've got from Rachel and am swatching with. I'm not going to share my swatches just yet because I'm still developing what I'm doing and I haven't completely settled on what I'm going to be doing. But these colours are just beautiful together. So we've got the creamy Dorset and then the naturally brown, the sort of Morit Shetland, and then this really sort of charcoaly brown. Like, it almost just looks black here, but it's got this lovely brown to it with some lighter heathering in it, which is just so glorious. And it's so bouncy. It's woolen spun. So this is spun at the Natural Fibre Company down in Cornwall. And as I've said with this collection, I'm working with yarns that are not just from wool grown in the southwest of England, but have also been completely milled and processed in the West Country. And yeah, so Rachel, well, they on the farm have been doing some really interesting work. They've been doing a load of planting of trees and shrubs, and they're creating a wetland corridor. So they're on quite a slope, and the water runoff goes into the River Stour, and the river floods further downstream, which is apparently becoming a problem. And so they are building a wetland corridor, which is a series of leaky dams which they've excavated and are planting a load of wetland-loving native plants and chucking in loads of brushwood to slow down the flow of water and eventually create wetland habitat, which is endangered in this country because we used to have natural ponds all over the place that have slowly dried up. And on farms it's space that often can't be used and therefore is considered commercially useless, and so ponds often get filled in and things. And so they're doing the opposite. They're creating a habitat that is much in need for our native wildlife. And it's just so great. It's lovely hearing about these things, and I'm going to try and bring some of that into the design, but we'll see how that goes. So that's Gpol Farm. They're really nearby and it's lovely. They also have lots of beautiful dyed colours, but I might end up using some natural dyes in the collection, but I'm sort of inclined to just go with the natural fibre colours. So whatever is grown on the sheep, probably all sheep. I might track down some alpaca, but it's likely to all be wool. Yeah, and then the second visit I did was more recently. It was earlier this week, and I went up to see Lydia and Clive at Lower Hampon Farm, which is up in the Cotswolds. And I had the loveliest drive up there. It's less than 2 hours from me. The weather wasn't great, but as they're quite high up in terms of elevation, and as I was driving to the farm, getting on smaller roads, and the mist was closing in, and so it had just sort of been a bit grey and drizzly most of the day, and then it started getting mistier and mistier, and almost all the leaves have fallen off the branches now, and so it was just lovely and atmospheric. And then I pulled into the farm. A couple of partridges ran across the road in front of me. There's a horse chestnut tree to the right, and there's just a little squirrel sitting on the roots just nibbling away, and it was just so picturesque and lovely. And then I had a really nice time with Lydia going around and meeting their sheep. They have a flock of Devon closeall, which are endangered. So they are a single breed flock, and so they are working on conserving the breed. They have to be quite careful about genetics, so they rotate rams quite frequently so they can ensure that they've got as broad a gene pool as they can. They have to be very careful around tupping time, which is now, which is when the rams are put in with the ewes. And they have to be careful to make sure that the right rams go with the right ewes to ensure that things don't get unpleasantly mixed up. And so Devon close wool fleece is slightly coarse, it's not the softest, but Lydia, this yarn is spun up at Curlew in Wales, which is actually where my Mendip yarn is spun. I love them, they produce beautiful yarn. But I think Lydia's going to be sending some yarn to a mill down in Dorset, so that hopefully I can use that in the collection, but if not, I'm sure I'll do something with them. So I just got this one ball, and it's dyed with wove, which is grown on the farm. So they have a market garden where they produce veg boxes, and they have a farm shop for the local village. And they also grow a lot of dye plants on the farm, and Lydia dyes them herself, and she's got such a beautiful range of colours grown right there. I also got some honey from their bees, and the honey is delicious. And you know, they're creating ponds for, I can't remember what the organisation is called, but people who are working on protecting newts. So they're making ponds for newts. They've been doing no-dig agriculture no-till, for about a decade now, so well ahead of the curve on that one. So rather than ploughing and churning up the soil structure, they cut whatever's been growing at the base and allow it to sort of rot down into the soil, which leaves the soil structure intact. And you get great like mycelium networks and stuff, which are really beneficial for helping plants to grow. And it's also much better for like bugs and things because they're not constantly disturbed. So yeah, I think I'll put links to both of those farms below, because if you are in the area or looking for yarns from smaller farms, they're really, really lovely. They're doing beautiful work. Their sheep are so well loved. You know, they're all known by name, and it's just really, really nice. And it's been so good to start having more of these properly affirming conversations about sort of where our fibres are coming from, and trying to do something to place more of a focus on that. Yeah, so I'll be sharing more like as I make progress on this project. I've got another couple of farms lined up that I'm going to be visiting and need to plan in visits for, and so I'm hoping to share some of their stories and work on this collection over the next few months. It's going to be published hopefully autumn next year. So I've got a fair bit of time to work on it, but I'm also being really ambitious with what I want to achieve with it. And so I hope it's something that will be interesting. And if you are in the West Country, Southwest England, Fibreshed is a great place to find local wool producers who are doing things in an ethical and environmentally conscious way. And the Fibreshed in general, the whole network, there are ones all over. I think it's mostly concentrated in North America, the UK, and sort of Western Europe. But it's worth checking if you've got a local Fibreshed network, if you can see what they're doing. Often they'll have a list or map of producers and you can see who's making things in your area. And if you're interested in finding out more what's happening locally to you, it's a really nice way to do so. And there's also a lot of education about fibres and industry and all of that stuff. Yeah. So a pattern I have forgotten to talk about so far, because I don't have it with me. So much of this is based around show and tell, and I just like holding things and showing them to you. I a couple of months ago, a pattern of mine that I designed for the fibre company was released. The Pelagic cardigan, nice open cardigan, sleeveless but super cozy, was released by the fibre company. They have kits for it, and they have offered a discount code for my followers. And so I will share the discount code in the description below, because it has numbers in it and it's easier. And the pattern rights won't be reverting to me. Fiberco are going to keep them, so if you like the pattern and want it, you can get it from them straight away. It's available on their website as an individual pattern and as part of the kits, and I think it's also available on Ravelry. So I'll include links to those below, and yeah, I hope that you'll enjoy that one. So I think that's probably all I have to share with you today. As I've said, I've got loads of stuff happening in the background, and it's all stuff I'm really, really excited about. Oh no, there's another thing I wanted to mention on the subject of like super local regional textiles. You may have heard me talk about the Nettle Dress before, an indie film about a textile artist who has harvested local nettles and processed them and spun them and woven them and sewn them into a dress. It's a beautiful, beautiful film. I've seen it a couple of times now. I saw it in Frome, which is fairly local to me, and then I managed to catch a screening in Bristol, which had a Q&A with Dylan, the filmmaker, Alan, the textile artist, and oh god, I've forgotten her name, the person who runs Sustainable Fashion Week. And it was just such an interesting Q&A, and then afterwards, you know, loads of people hanging around, fellow Fibreshed people, people who are involved in the local textile scene, managed to see and feel the dress, which was incredible, and had a really good chat with Dylan, the filmmaker. It was so nice and heartening and just really, really wonderful to connect to all of those people. And I know that a few people have mentioned to me that they're not going to be able to make a filming, or they're, you know, it's difficult with an indie film and them trying to get lots of dates in the diary, but often if there's not one super nearby to you, it's really difficult. I found that myself. All of that to say, it's now available to watch online. So I'll put a link to that, because I know a few people have asked me about where they can watch it, and I'm not affiliated with them in any way. I just really, really love the film and the work that Alan and Dylan have done and are doing, and it's raised some really interesting conversations, and I think it's a beautiful film, and I'd like as many people to see it as possible. So I'll put a link to where you can watch that. I'm not 100% sure how the watching works. You pay to watch it, and then I'm not sure how long you have to watch it or whatever, but it's a lovely, lovely film, and I highly recommend, if you are interested in textile processes and slow crafting and beautiful human stories, it's definitely one to watch. So with that, I think that is actually all I have to share with you. So I'm going to be super busy over the next month or so before I chat with you again. I will hopefully have more things to show you, and it always seems to be the case that this time of year I'm very, very busy with knitting, and for a lot of people that's gift knitting, but for me it's just design samples, and I'm not sure why they tend to cluster around the end of the year. But yes, if you would like to keep up with me in between videos, I'm over on Instagram as Marina Skua, and you can join my newsletter, which is where I share pattern releases and new product updates and shop updates and the occasional discount, and you can hear about what I'm up to. And yeah, I hope to catch you next time, and until then, bye bye.